Welcome back, everybody. It is your Tuesday night episode of Getting Defensive, brought to you by Gridiron Ratings. I am your host, Kraig Reith, and with me, as always, we have Gary, the IDP tipster, and James is on special assignment for tonight. But don't worry, folks, he will be back next week with us when we are going to be going over the sort of IDP settings, scoring, roster spots, all that fun stuff we'd planned about talking tonight. We want to save that for when James is here because he has a lot of good info that we want to make sure that he can share out with you guys. So did a quick pivot here tonight, and we're going to be talking about linebackers from the last rookie class, 2021, for this new rookie season. So, Gary, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good, Craig. Ready to rock and roll and get through these linebackers. Pretty interesting outcome for a few of them, considering how near and dear they were to a lot of people this time last year. So, but still plenty to talk about. A lot of upside there.
Hope always springs eternal with the draft. That's certainly true. Sometimes it's all for naught, especially in that first year. But we'll certainly dive into that a bit. Right. I wanted to go into a couple signings that I saw before we do that, and these are relatively recent. We're not going to do a full sort of in-depth discussion because I think they were both short, sort of one-year deals. Troy Reeder, who we've talked about a lot, the former Ram, signed with the Chargers, which is an interesting spot given sort of we just saw that Kenneth Murray just recently had ankle surgery, I believe, and he just showed off that big old boot on his foot. So it's an interesting time of the year to just have that now. I know Drew Tranquill's still there, the guy you had interest in. We know Kazir White had left. So do you see Reeder going in there if they don't make a move in the draft? Because we don't know if it's the guys that we know that are there going into this next season. Do you think Reeder's going to be competing for one of those spots?
Yeah. I mean, he's capable of doing it. I don't think he's that much better of a talent than anybody there, but I mean, he's capable of doing it. This is the first I've heard. You said Murray had a walking boot on?
Yeah, he just had Kenneth Murray just had ankle surgery. He had a big post.
I
can find it. He posted the photo on Instagram or whatever.
So this is instant reaction, folks. I love it.
It was April 7th he posted it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, realistically, it changes the ball game kind of. I mean, we've really got to look at him 50-50 at this point. I mean, he struggled to begin with. As far as Tranquill, I wrote about him a while back. I already thought this was stock up year for him. And I really believe that after they let Kaiser White leave too. I mean, I just think I reinforced it. But I think Reeder's got that possibility. He could come in. I mean, he's capable of staying on the field, and you know, he does his job. That's what helped. He might not be the best at doing this job, but he does his job. So, as in a supporting cast, it is pre-draft. We don't know exactly where they're going to go.
Yep.
So, I mean, when you look at that offense, what do you need on the air? I'm not 100% sure. So, could we see something, spent? There's still a couple of interesting free agents out there too. So, I mean, at this point, I like Tranquill's upside, and Troy Reeder sure has just as good a shot as any Murray managers right now.
Yeah, they took him in 2020, the 23rd pick overall, and he really just hasn't shown a whole lot. And this year, they have the 17th pick, I believe, in the first round. So that does kind of seem to be the sweet spot where they're looking for those linebackers to first be taken. It would be a bit surprising to me, but if they really feel that one of those guys can make an instant impact, I could see it because they clearly have title aspirations with what they've put together on that team this year. They're going for it. So it'll be interesting to see how it pans out after the draft.
Kind of sounds like a headache.
Yeah.
Between the two. Yeah.
The only other signing of really note of guys that we've discussed before, Ronnie Harrison re-up for 1 year with the Cleveland Browns, and he's been relevant when he's been healthy before. So do you think he's going to end up being the starter for that Browns team? I know, they've spent some money with John Johnson. They spent a first-round pick on Delpit a little while ago. Health will really matter, but do you think he's probably going to end up being more of a backup with the 1 year deal there?
I actually liked it last year with Harrison going into the first part of the season. I was happy to get him in deeper formats and have him as one of my second to third. When I started the season, I was expecting second to third starting DB type results, and did not get it. So I'm a little bit nervous. I think he possibly, he kind of seemed like he also got a little phased out last year.
Yep.
I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon about this signing. It's a 1-year deal. So, at this point, no, who I expect to have a nice bounce back would be John Johnson. I think he's a perfect candidate for things to change his second year there as a free safety. I don't know. It'll be interesting. It was a little bit more clear cut until they re-signed Harrison, right? So
yeah, I do think he probably doesn't end up starting for him unless he has to. But at least you know what you're getting with him if he does end up starting. That he's a guy that can sort of come up and fill up in the box and get you tackles that way. So
definitely does put a kink in the armor of selecting any three of them. I think your better value might be taking a shot at John Johnson can bounce back. We'll see. If he doesn't bounce back this year, then we're doomed. I think he's got another. What do you have, like a 5-year contract? Maybe, I don't know. We'll see.
It was big money that he signed, to come over. So I have to imagine they're going to be using him. And who knows how things play out with their offense with making that big deal for Deshaun Watson. But if their offense starts getting more high-powered, potentially, leading to teams throwing more on opposed to that ground and pound that you see a lot in that AFC North. So could be helpful in that regard for IDP players for us. But like we said at the start of the show, we're going to mainly start diving into these linebackers. This is a quick count off the top of my head, but I believe there were 24 linebackers taken overall in the draft last year. That'll vary depending on who you call a linebacker, who you call an edge, and all that fun stuff that we talk about, of course. But we're going to be going off at least I have up profootballreference.com. Interesting of note, the last player taken in the draft was a linebacker too by Tampa Bay. I think he mainly played special teams, but he played in all 17 games regular season for him. So, hey, that's something.
Right.
We won't get to him anyway. We're going to start off the draft with the first one taken overall, name that we've all heard about quite a bit, of course, because just blew up, if you want to talk about one of the linebackers in this draft class, Micah Parsons, number 12 overall. He was used all over the field, really, by Dallas out of necessity. And that defensive line, a lot of people weren't expecting that, but it was nice to see him to be fully capable of that. Gary, I know you don't have your rankings, right up in front of you this second, but how are you feeling about him going into next season? Like, is he a top 10 guy for you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love his situation either way. He's going to produce either as a regular linebacker or an edge player, especially after seeing they weren't able to get Gregory to come back. So I really do expect, and they re-signed Vanderish. Yeah, he's got top end written all over him. He's top 10 for sure. A good top 5 pick if you could do a hell of a lot worse. He's got all the momentum at the moment. So, he's the only one that really, comparably to his hype that was happening this time last year, heading into the season, he was really even the only one to come close to meeting that, and actually by bypassing, actually doing better than the hype. I was wrong. I didn't expect that much out of him. I had him like third, I think, on my rankings about this time last year, but I was, as you can see, I was completely off. I think there was few. I'm not sure. Thomas Davis was at a few number 1 spots just for the fact. I don't know. Where'd you have Parsons about this time last year? Did you have number 1?
Going into the draft, I did. After the draft, just because of, for redraft anyway, because of that whole situation with the glut of linebackers that they had there in Dallas, I had him as 2 after Jamin Davis, which, of course, we'll get to him. But
right.
As a Dallas fan, I was happy with him falling that far. I was just kind of confused, like, how is this all going to shake out with those linebackers?
Right. Yeah, mine actually talking about him being third. That was post draft,
Okay.
post NFL to where he landed. So, yeah. And at the time, shoot, you still had Jalen Smith on the roster, I believe, too, didn't we?
Yeah, he was there. They had Van Der Esch. They
Yeah.
drafted Jabril Cox in the third round, who maybe
Hmm.
we'll get to him. He didn't play a whole lot, but he was a decent coverage linebacker for him. He probably
Right.
end up getting more playing time. And then Keanu Neal talk about playing at linebacker, which came to fruition. It was just a very muddled situation.
Yeah. Not so sure. It might have thinned out a little bit better this year since because we have to expect Parsons to be used off the edge at this point. If they don't, I mean, I like Armstrong. I believe they re-signed them,
Yep, he's
re-signed
back.
him. And I mean, he's a good body. Is he going? I don't think that he's got that top end. That if you had a Gregory or somebody like that there and some sacks, but I mean, if he can stay on the field and stay healthy for the entire year, he definitely has some upside. But Parsons is who you can't keep that guy from rushing. It'd just be a total waste. He's got to be you're like him and Lawrence. You just got to send them. Wouldn't make any sense not to do it.
I think he's probably not going to be lined up in that position constantly. I think they're going to try to use him all over the field like he did, but just having that flexibility to be used off the edge will just
Yeah.
help you from an IDP perspective. But it did
Even
thin
rushing
out.
from the middle. Even
Yep.
rushing from the middle. So I mean, he's deadly. He's quick. So
I
yeah, he's
expect
got
the
to be up
Cowboys
there.
to take someone though, because I mean, if you sort of compare where it was this time, after the draft, it's on a month from now last year, it's
Right.
really thinned out. Keanu Neal is no longer there. He had signed with Tampa Bay. Jalen Smith, we know, is gone. So they
Yeah.
got Van Der Esch back on the 1-year deal, got Jabril Cox, and then they really don't have anything behind those guys right now. So they're
Yeah.
going to draft someone probably, but not anyone that I'm expecting to really have an impact immediately on that team.
Yeah. It's probably as is right there. Yeah.
Going to
They did good getting Javon Curse back. I think that was a great signing for them to redo. He performed well for him in that role, and I think that really helped solidify that secondary a little bit. I'm not so excited about who they got a free safety now.
I believe it's Malik Hooker.
Yeah, I'm not really excited about that, but we'll see how that works out. I don't think I'm chasing any rainbows with him.
For IDP perspective, what we're talking about, I don't think he's anyone really to be paying attention to either.
Mm-hmm. No, not until further notice.
Moving on here, going from pick 12 was pick 16 was her next linebacker in a very different situation. Zaven Collins, another big name coming into the draft and taken pretty high, but just didn't end up panning out the way a lot of people thought he would. He ended up basically losing all that hope that we had for him to Jordan Hicks, who is now gone. Kind of seems like they're putting their eggs in the Isaiah Simmons, Zaven Collins basket. So how do you see him fitting in next to Simmons there?
I mean, on paper, he should fit in there just fine. He should be. I could see in a perfect world where they're both down, on the field for all three downs. It's really on Collins. I mean, considering last year and sparingly used, man, it's tough. I'm excited for him, and I think I don't know if I'm investing that much into going and grabbing him. I think he's got a ceiling at best of a high LB1 personally, or a high LB2. Apologies. Yeah, elite. I was just going to say elite. LB2. I'm sticking around that range. I think Simmons is on there. You have Buda Baker. I think expecting any more out of Collins and possibly that ceiling is just setting the bar a little bit too high considering the unknowns, um, you know, who's going to be calling the plays? Is it going to be Simmons? Is he going to have the green dot? Or are they going to turn it right over to Collins? So there's a lot. I'm not that excited about that. There's a couple of these others that I'd be a little bit more excited about. I think I got to say overall, if we look back, I mean, I looked and at least in the balanced format of the IDP Incentive League, flagship league for Gridiron Ratings on the IDP league stuff. There was only two rookie linebackers last year that made top 64 in IDP production, and that was Bolton, and he was down on most rankings. I think I seen him anywhere from 5 to 10 or something, 5 to 8, and then Parsons was up in that top 3 most of the time. So if I recall, my old mind isn't fried enough I can remember that. But either way, it just goes to show it's a small percentage of rookie linebackers each year, any rookie IDP, that even actually starts making a dent their first season in that top 64 or top 100, which is really what about standard size leagues would be using. If you was in a deeper league, then sure, you're going to go 120 players, 150, but it just depends. I guess there are those ones that go 350. There are a bunch of those copy. Oh yeah, I've seen some of those that have been like, in this 50-team league, we got 105 on the raw. What? I don't know, man. Here's my rankings. See what you can do.
I think that's really important to point out this time of year, though, because last year was a good linebacker class. There was a lot of hope with a lot of players that we had the community in general had expectations for. You see what Gary's talking about with how many of them actually really had sort of a week-to-week impact that you could count on. Think about that with this next class coming up here in 2022 that isn't really viewed as strong of a linebacker class. Even you really have two top names that most people are talking about with first round potential. Then it's a lot of guys with somewhere in that day 2, but you're not really sure. So don't be reaching for these guys in those drafts coming up. We've talked about it a lot on here, but don't fall in love with those guys that you could probably get a lot cheaper after the second year with an owner that spent that higher draft capital and just saw them do nothing, like you saw a lot of these guys this past year.
That's true. They should all be treated as luxuries. If they work out, they work out. If they don't work out, then you weren't planning on having them as a every week starter. Just treat them as luxuries. You can always buy in what they're worth when they're worth it. That's how I look at it. I make them earn it.
Moving on in the draft here, there's one or two more linebackers, but the next one certainly Jamin Davis of the Washington now Commanders was taken 19th overall. He was seen as a really raw prospect with just all the athletic potential in the world coming out of Kentucky. And similar to Collins, he just basically bombed. He didn't see the field a whole lot at all. They had John Bostic, Cole Holcomb, some other guys that, veterans that got on the field. And they also used 3 safeties a ton last year to sort of make up for that lack of a great linebacker core. But again, pre-draft here, kind of looks like we got Holcomb and Davis if they don't do anything different. Gary, do you think he was able to learn anything this past year that's going to make him see the field, or are you expecting them to have some sort of competition for him?
I think if I'm a Holcomb owner, I'm happy and feeling pretty secure. Yeah. Realistically, unless they brought in somebody like Anthony Barr or anything, I think Anthony Barr is sitting there primed to come in and mess up somebody's whole setup, but if put in the right position. But he's like so risky. I don't know. I think that I would probably rather run with Collins than I would Thomas at this point. Was there a bigger disappointment? I think a lot of the rankings that I had seen, he was 1 or 2, just based off of the fact that he went straight to Washington. Was he the first? He wasn't the first linebacker off the board.
He was the 3rd, I think. He was 21st.
Yeah, but it was just how he. Right. It was just assumed, and then Riviera mentioned a lot of familiarities between him and Thomas Davis, I believe, and such. So it really hooked a lot of us. So this one's probably the biggest between him and Collins. I think Collins was hanging up there around 2, and there wasn't a reason not to believe the Collins situation either.
Yeah, from the most part that I remember, those guys, they were always really in the top 4, but for the most part, I think the top 3 too post-draft, just because of where they were taken in comparison to these other guys. Parsons had the most muddied situation. He was probably the best talent, and I think that kind of remains to be, or was proven out and remains true. But man, those other guys had that athletic ability, and then going into that great situation. Yeah, I agree. A lot of people bid on it, and I did too, certainly.
Right.
So
yeah, well, like I just mentioned, I don't know if I did a while ago, but we got to remember, like with Collins too. About the same time they drafted Collins, they were coming out saying they were looking to trade Jordan Hicks possibly, or
cut him even,
or cut him, right? And so that changed the whole dynamic because everybody's like, "Oh, okay, we're going to move him up the board." But lo and behold, yeah, Jordan Hicks entered that. So I think you might have mentioned that at the beginning. I'm not sure. I don't know, but yeah, it was pretty disappointing. It's kind of hard to sit back, especially with how much hype there is on rookies, not to bite into this, to think that they're going to be that next holy grail IDP guy, going to be Parsons, going to be Leonard. Those guys are terrific to hit on, but I mean, we kind of start adding a few more like here and there. But again, this year, yeah, I think you mentioned, I haven't dove fully into it, but I'm not hearing much about this linebacker class coming out this year. So it'll be interesting. We know that there are still some teams with some needs. Will they fill them with some okay rookies? Will they sign some of the rest of these veterans that might be sitting around? There's still a couple out there. I think Hitchison's is
still, yep.
Yeah, so there's a couple of decent veterans that at least should be signed somewhere, you would think, unless they're just taking it off.
And, not to go back even farther in time, but, we're just talking about mainly the 2021 class here. If you go back even to, the year before, 2020, just for another example, there were, 4 linebackers taken in the first round there too.
Mm-hmm.
Simmons, Murray, Brooks, and Queen. You keep even going farther down the line there of other names that people got excited about. Willie Gay was a guy that had a lot of interest. Logan Wilson, we've talked about a lot, didn't see the field really the first year. I mean, the guys that saw the field, even my point I'm just making is this isn't an anomaly. It's more of the rule than the exception. And good luck trying to figure out which of that top 1 or 2 guys is going to end up being something worthwhile, because man, sometimes it's just throwing darts. Simmons didn't do a whole lot his first year. He showed up towards the end of the season, was a very nice utility piece, but he wasn't someone you were starting in your leagues either.
Right. Yep. I was going to pull it up. I mean, I've done the rookie success rate tracker for like 7 or 8 years now, and that's basically just I did a percentage thing. I didn't update it this year. I've kind of fizzed out on it on proving the point. But over the last 8 years, if I look, I think after the 2020 class, only 3.8% of any drafted IDP rookie has ever made an impact in that 8 years. That's including a couple of really good classes. But most of them only have 1 to 2 to 3 guys a year that get into that top 64. And those are impact plays. Those are guys you can play, Yeah. That's just a matter of factor to their hyped peak. So, I've actually kept that. I could probably look it up here, but I know that's about the number is 3.8. I think the highest I've ever seen. I was trying to think of the class 2017 or 18. Was it Deion Jones and Devin White? No, wait a minute. What class was
that? Was 19, I believe. Had Devin Bush and Devin White.
Oh, now I gotta look. Let me see how far I can scroll down here.
Yeah, they were. Devin White went 5th in 2019. That had Rashawn Gary, Devin Bush.
Right.
Those were really the only linebackers.
There was like that 1 year. There was like 1 year that really it knocked him up. The particular percentage up over 4%. I think there was like 4 of them, maybe 5 in between. That's overall IDP. That's linebackers.
It was probably 2018.
Yeah,
because I'm not going off the numbers here, but you got Roquan Smith, Tremaine Edmonds, Van Der Esch, Rashaan Evans, Darius Landry.
I'd have to scroll. I mean, I've wrote 250 or 300 articles since that. So yeah, I couldn't find it, but yeah, that sounds right.
Fred Warner, Jerome Baker. I mean, there were a number of guys that got immediate playing time that year that are still relevant.
Couple because of injury, but it all played out and they stood up. So, but if I remember right, we can't. Yeah, got their opportunities out of the blue. I'm sure. I think Fred Warner got maybe his opportunity out of the blue that year from injury.
I think he did out of injury. Yeah, but in the years before, well, I guess after that, if we're going timeline, 2020 or 2019, 2020, 2021, you got maybe 2 linebackers,
right?
Maybe 3, but it seems like really 2 guys that'll get you useful points. So, I mean, be thinking of that when you're drafting these guys.
Right. And that's over a long time period. Like I said, I went back 8 years, I think, 2013 or something. And that's 3.8% last checked. And so if I checked right now, it probably, considering last year, it's probably either there or lower. It might have already dropped down to like 3.5 or something. I don't know.
Because like I said, there's 24-ish linebackers taken, and you maybe had 2 of them guys be relevant. That's not good odds.
Right. I spent a long time going, I don't hate rookies. I'm just pointing out something. They're luxury, Don't depend on them. It just, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that. But at this point now, I hope I can just say
it. Do you have that up over on gridironratings.com that they can look for that? Or is that on your Twitter?
Oh, yeah, you would have to scroll. I mean, I just scrolled down probably, and then it's load more. So you're going to load more a couple times. I mean, you're going to see probably a good 50 articles before you even see the load more. So, sorry, I don't have that handy.
It gives you a good opportunity to dig through all those good articles over there that you have up on gridironratings.com to go find that. And I mean, like you said, you did the research, you can go find it, and don't overdraft these linebackers.
Now you got me looking. We can keep talking. I'll keep looking. We almost see rankings top odds drafting. Who was we moving on? We can keep talking about.
Yep, we'll move on here. So we just got through Jamin Davis, and the next guy here, he's sort of listed as a linebacker, outside linebacker, maybe an edge, but Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, 32nd pick by Tampa, definitely more of an edge type, but saw some playing time and actually did all right, pitching in as a edge guy. He got a few sacks and got some playing time. How are you kind of feeling about him as a guy off the edge there long term for Tampa? Because I don't believe they have JPP back right now, so it looks like he may be ending up being a starter unless they sign someone across from Shaq Barrett there.
I like it. I like his upside. I like what he did on the field last year, given his opportunities. I mean, I think he's popular amongst few people out here in the IDP community that he should have the opportunity going into next year. And I mean, you could do worse stepping into that position. I don't think the lines changed that much. I think Shoes re-signed.
Sue is a free agent right now.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah. So the Vita Vea, but I think he got hurt. I don't know if he's coming off a back from an injury. For some reason, I thought he was, but that defensive line will be interesting.
I like his upside. I'm probably not, going and grabbing him or paying high enough for him to depend on him as a complete starter. I mean, you could, I have some love for him. I think he's got upside, but I just couldn't make a big adjustment to all of a sudden think that he's going to hit double-digit sacks. So I'd like to see that before I ever start making that kind of assumption. Where are you at on him?
He's the guy I'm keeping an eye on in most of my leagues because of where he was drafted and that situation where, he could learn from those old hands, and Barrett and JPP how to play. And then, they're going to be going for it now. So I kind of feel like there might be a move yet, whether it's bringing JPP back on a cheap deal or some other edge rusher, because they don't have a ton of money. But clearly they want to be contending, and they're probably going to win that division. So I don't know that they're going to thrust him into a starting lineup. And, a rotational edge guy really isn't going to get you a whole lot in most leagues. but I'm definitely keeping an eye on him. And if he gets dropped in a deep league and I have that bench spot on a team that's rebuilding, I'm going to scoop him up because that long term I really like him. But this next year, even though it looks like he's got a clear path right now, I'm not investing in that with the draft and some of those guys still out there.
Yeah, good news. I found it. Let's see here.
Right.
So we'll get it. We just gotta get it open. View. All right. So now what am I supposed to do with it?
I think you're just looking for the number that you had the last time you had. And how many years?
Oh, yeah. I'll tell you what I'll do, folks, is that I'll try to remember afterwards. Craig, remind me, and I'll actually go in and put this link into the descriptions if you'd like to see those numbers. Actually, it's 3.92, so less than 4%. Like I said, at one point, I actually have one here. Probably could stand a little bit of light. I've got the different hit rates for each season, so I'm going to turn this up a little bit. Let's see. So, yeah, it was 2018, which ended up being a 7% hit rate. That really helped jump it up. Prior to that, 2017 was 2.3, 2016 3.1, 15 3.2. So 14 was a 3.9. Most of them was 3.5 or lower, 3 on average, until the 2018 shot it up. 2019 was pretty decent with a 4.7 hit. So 2020 was a 3.2, so it went back down to the average it had been. But just if I'll add this link to the description if you happen to want to check it out. If you go looking on our articles page, you'll dig forever. Maybe I'll also share this on Twitter if you follow me at the IDP Tipster. So
it's good to learn from maybe not even your own mistakes if you're getting into IDP, but past mistakes and other people that can kind of teach you where the pitfalls are so you don't fall into them. And this is a great one where you can just go look at the actual data and not have to spend the time digging through it because Gary already did it for you.
And I got to be 100% honest, folks. Again, it's not that I don't hate rookies. Okay. It's nothing to do with this, but I'm going to tell you, if you look at it, when we do a lot of our free agency stuff, like we've been doing prior this year, when I look at it, last year there were quite a few free agents that signed elsewhere that made way bigger impacts than a lot of these rookie hyped up guys that had all the attention the whole entire offseason, did. And there was, so, focus your resources, carry it that way. Look, pay attention to those free agents. Don't forget about them. You got to take them serious. Rookie hype can't run over what those guys have built and bring to the show. It's a lot of pressure to go from college to a pro. Not everybody's a Parsons. And this past year just kind of pointed that out. I mean, Bolton, if I remember right, Bolton was like that 5, 6, 7 in rank or something. And it was just based off the whole. I think I got that right. It was Bolton, right?
Yeah, Nick Bolton, yeah.
Yeah. And then he ended up coming up above all these guys that was ranked before him, which would have been Collins, Davis. I particularly had Ernest Jones up too high. But let's see who else was up there. Oh, JOK. I mean, JOK didn't blow off any doors, so. It was a down pass, and these guys are talented. There's got to be talent there. We know JOK is talented, right?
Well, yeah, and of the guys that didn't perform, he actually did decent. I mean, he ended up with 76 combined tackles, and he had, maybe 3 really playable games, which, I mean, it sounds like, oh, that's not much. Well, when you're comparing him to a lot of these other guys, he actually did all right for a rookie.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that probably the way it sits right now, I think I'm putting JOK in there as probably my second best. When you think about it, I think his situation heading into this season is probably right there behind Parsons. He's a different inside linebacker type play, though. But I mean, out of who's your second favorite going into this year if you're drafting? If you had them all sitting there, you was ready to pick one, and Parsons was off the board, who are you taking?
Under their current situations, I'm probably taking JOK with what one he's shown before, two where I had him coming into the draft, and then three, just the flexibility, sort of like Parsons, but different. He provides the Browns flexibility where he can play all over the field. He played through that joker position in college. He's played deep. He's played, a bit of the slot, so he can be used all over. Not up on the line, sort of like Parsons does. He's sort of like the opposite if you flip him. But that flexibility means a lot in the NFL these days, where he can be on the field with Anthony Walker, or Jacob Phillips or someone, and he brings something different to the table. So a guy like that, when we've talked about how few true 3-down linebackers there are that are on the field all the time, he's going to give himself that opportunity because of how many different ways he can be used. So I do like that.
Yeah. And I just, nobody else is really. No, wait a minute. No, wait a minute. What about Bolton?
You see, I like Bolton, but I want to see who they bring in next to him and how they're going to end up using him. And Bolton to me is more the traditional type of, throwback linebacker where he's more of a thumper. I'm not saying he can't go out there. He showed he's able to go out and follow running backs and stuff. Right. But I see JOK as still a better overall prospect. And with the situation being a little bit more clear for him to me with, who he's playing next to, they're right in that same sort of tier. If you want to do it tiers, it's probably Parsons by himself, and then in tier 2, one of those two guys, and whichever one you like more, I can't blame you. But from what we've seen, those are the two guys.
Right. Just with Bolton, the whole how they use their linebackers, and yes, he did stand out. He did a hell of a job, but just the murkiness of it. I give JOK probably has the edge to maybe more secure playing time.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I'm not dishing Bolton, folks. I mean, he's probably still up there. You can't, but
from what we've seen and everyone else's situations, which we can probably get to that. We've talked a lot about Ernest Jones. His situation just changed a whole lot. Whereas if that Bobby Wagner signing doesn't happen, you're probably talking about him up there in, the top 3 or 4 guys where for this next year, despite what was said, we talked about this last episode, I think you can't really put him up there at this point just because the situation's completely changed.
No. Collins, Thomas, they're better options at this point. I mean, there was a little bit of talk, like we mentioned last show, about how, they might use both of them. But still, though, your upside is probably still with a couple of these other guys over him at this point, at least for this year.
Before we go into sort of these second round guys, and that's probably about all we'll get through. We did touch on Ernest Jones, so we don't have to dig too deep into linebackers here, but make sure you hit like on YouTube. Let us know if you have any sort of comments. I'm sure you're already subscribed. Make sure you have notifications on so you know exactly when we go live and you don't miss this. Make sure you're over on gridironratings.com. Subscribe to there for all the lot of draft content right now. I mean, let's be honest, but there's still other good stuff that we're putting up there. There's rankings. Some of those dime drops that I know you are giving out, and Brandon Jackson has his articles coming out about a lot of these second-year guys too, actually. So
we've been rock and rolling over there. There's a good, I want to say 30 to 40 fresh IDP articles. Well, fresh this off season. So definitely come on over and check those out for us.
We talked about him a whole lot. So I'm not going to go too much into JOK. He was taken 52nd overall. We like his situation, long-term sort of view with what he showed. Taking a couple spots before him, again, might be an outside linebacker in your league, might be an edge player, but Azeez Ojulari started off the year hot. I think he had a sack in his first 3 games. And then, the Giants were a mess. Let's be honest, that linebacking core was a mess with the injuries, but he did show some promise. So probably more in an edge type of league, but do you like his outlook too, Gary?
I'm critical of that one too because of the fact of how it's just, I don't know. It's like a jinx on that outside. When was the last time they had an outside linebacker that was a sack master? I mean, it is haven't had a really good outside pass rush for such a good long time. I'm not. I mean, I don't think if we looked it up, I don't think he graded out well, if I remember what right. But through PFF, which we know that's not the low and behold of everything. But I'm pretty sure that I was thinking he didn't grade out well. But either way, I don't like the situation. I'm going to let somebody else find out if he's an edge player. I'm going to let somebody else find out. I'm not looking at him as a linebacker right now. I think there's plenty of other upside guys that I would rather see and get a hold of than go there. Definitely a depth piece in the standard leagues. Probably not even in standard leagues. Probably on a waiver wire flyer.
Yeah, so he did not grade out well. Overall, again, he didn't play a ton, but still not good to see when you're sort of sitting down there in the 50s and the 60s.
Am I correct? Was it in the poorish range?
Yeah, it was in the 50s and 60s pretty much for everything for him last year.
Well, I was thinking it was worse, so that's below average.
And answering your question with the last time they had a decent edge player, stat-wise, it was probably Marcus Golden. I think in 2019, he had 10 sacks, he had 72 combined tackles, and 13 tackles for a loss. He's at least somebody that you could, play for you in a pinch if you needed. But beyond that, I mean,
Strahan.
Well, you could probably find another season or two. You're talking about a stud that you can start and not have to worry about at all. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, right. I've been staring at this for a long time. They're kind of like it's a thing in New York Jets, New York Giants. Don't make use of your pass rush. We don't need it. That's how they look at things.
Well, I guess I take it back. JPP was useful in between there. He had some really good seasons.
That's true too. Yeah, I guess I should give. Yeah,
I forgot that he was a Giant.
Right. Do we have an update on his JPP's health right now? I hadn't seen anything. I looked earlier, but I don't remember.
I haven't seen anything about his health. I know he's had interviews with teams. The Cowboys were sort of poking around, and I know the Buccaneers have said, "Oh, we've got some interest in re-signing him." But I think he's one of those guys where he's an edge rusher getting up there in age. He's 33.
Right.
He probably wants to still play for a contender, but he probably wants to see, am I going to have a starting job somewhere and not, just end up being a backup if he has his way about it. And he wants to get paid too, certainly.
Right. So how about Calais Campbell?
I think he went back to a place where he knows he's going to play and he knows the system.
Yeah.
And he
what did you like 35 and signed a 3-year contract or something?
It's one of those 3-year contracts. It isn't really 3 years. I mean,
forgive me.
That's one of those funny things that we see all the time here. And Twitter is the instant reaction machine where as soon as something is announced, if you don't have your set in stone take, who are you? What are you talking about? Right. But we've seen so many of these deals come out where it's like 5 years, 50 million or whatever. And it's like, all right, actually there's an out for, 3 million after year 2 or something.
Right. No, okay. Something. Right. Yeah. I'm glad to still see him in the league though. Good guy. He's always, Clayton Campbell was always one of my favorite DL plays back in the day.
Been around a long time and been useful a long time. Sort of like Cam Hayward.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, you can't forget about these guys. So back to second year guys. You got any more for us?
Yeah, I mean, talked about Aziz at 50. JOK was 52. Talked about him. Bolton, of course, we went over. He's top 3 guy anyway. Top 2 probably for a lot at 58. Ending out the second round, Pete Werner of the New Orleans Saints. What they're doing, it certainly seems like they think they can get a playoff spot with that recent trade with Philadelphia, where they traded their first-round pick and a future first next year for Philadelphia. 2 of Philadelphia's had his first-round picks this year. I don't know that they're going to take linebacker there. I mean, they need help sort of all over, and we see how much they had to move around in terms of cap to be able to do anything. So, they got Werner and Bond, who are both like second and third round picks the past 2 years. Didn't do a whole lot. They got DeMario Davis still. You think Werner ends up being a starter? Because I do think they still have Quan Alexander too, which, I mean, he actually came on towards the end of the year once he was healthy for just stat production.
I thought that Alexander was a free agent. I thought they let him go, but
I will check, but I thought he was still
okay.
on the roster, but I may be wrong.
Right. Yeah.
He is a free agent. You're correct.
Okay. So when it comes down to Warner, I like Warner a lot. I think his future as a dynasty aspect is great because I think if I remember right, we're close to the end of Davis's time in New Orleans. So Warner's kind of, I think, Josh Allen kind of helped pick him or whatever. He's kind of his guy for the future. When it comes to this year, I do expect him to have a good season, but I don't know if his ceiling is going to be capped off at a linebacker 2. It's kind of weird how last year went. Demarius Davis was the guy, period.
Yep.
Alexander came in, and all of a sudden he started stealing away some of those games, and we had Demarius Davis owners in a panic because there was just a flop. I don't know how many games there were, but I do remember a few. And then Pete Warner was in there, and Pete Warner come in and just produced like a madman when he got the chance, and while some injuries happened. So it didn't help our situation trying to judge that coming into this year so much because basically Davis is the ever down linebacker, and the other position is one of those 60, 70%. I do think Alexander might have played a little bit more percentage wise than what the position had been averaging besides. But there's only one full-time position on there normally, and that would be Davis. So I like Pete Warner. I think he's got all kinds of upside. And he's got that potential to hit. He's definitely a dynasty guy, but I don't think that I'm depending on him as a starter right now. Depends on what format, but even probably standard. I'd have to standard, even if I had a deeper depth chart. He's a nice gamble, though.
Yeah, and the thing is, they could phase him out, to your point about Davis, but they're not getting rid of him. He's got almost 17 and then 12 million dead cap the next 2 years before he's a free agent. That's a lot of money for a team that has cap issues to just cut. And, he is getting up there in age. He just turned 33. Up until sort of most of last year, he was really productive. So they could phase him out. But when you're paying a guy that much money and you're not just cutting him to get the that kind of dead cap, what's the point? Yeah. He's going to be relevant as far as that team will play him anyway.
Yeah, I didn't see anything when I was watching some of the Filmer games a while back. We were doing some other research, looking at Pete Warner and some other things. I didn't think that Davis actually looked like he lost a step or something. I'm not sure if he was 100%. I'm not sure if it was due to just how things went. I wouldn't count Davis out. I know that like in our IDP incentive draft, I do believe he was a free agent. I think he slipped down a little bit, if I remember right. I could be thinking wrong too. Maybe I'm just thinking of the ADP or the ranking and the order that he was in. He looked like he was slipping down boards. I think a lot of people might be anticipating Warner enough that, rightfully so, to have Davis slip down a little bit isn't too bad, but he might still 31 is old. 31 is old, but we're seeing these guys last a lot longer. And the only thing he's got to be able to do is stay on the field and absorb those tackles up there in that front as the run stopping guy, and run the defense. So we'll see how that works out for Warner. I do like him, but I wouldn't count Davis out just yet.
All right. Well, I'm going to give you off because we're getting towards the end of the show here. Some other names. Now, I'm just going to read some off, and you're going to let me know if any of these guys strike your fancy because it's sort of the third round that we're talking about here. And we're not going to talk about Ernest Jones because we've sort of talked about him ad nauseum. Right. Joseph Osai, who's more of an outside guy. Chaz Surratt of the Vikings. Monty Rice in Tennessee. And then Baron Browning in Denver are sort of your third rounders. Any of those guys have interest for you?
Browning, you have to kind of look at Browning. He did get some opportunity last year. He came in. They really liked him coming in. I seen rumor. Here's the one thing about Browning. I did see rumors thinking about it. It was possibility, or maybe you said something about it, about him moving to the outside edge.
No, I didn't think he was because they have Gregory, Chubb, and then they got Cooper still who they used.
Yeah, they just
Did they re-sign him?
Yeah, they just
so
re-signed
they sort
him
of
on
have
1
that
year deal.
edge first and second rotation set. So
yeah, I have interest in Browning too. See, there's Jonas Griffith to go in there. I like that kid's performance last year. I don't know if Kenny Young,
they signed.
Yeah, Singleton. Man, Singleton's such a default player. He's on the field. He's not that good in the NFL. So I can't say if he becomes the starter, then some of these guys just aren't developing very fast at all. I'd rather see Jonas Griffith get a chance than Alex Singleton. Nothing against him or the managers with him, but I mean, for the team's sake, I don't know. I'm just not a big fan in his production.
It's a little less messy than it was last year. Currently, draft coming up, but they got Justin Sternad. I think is coming back. He was injured, but Micah Kaiser, who they got off the practice squad from the Rams, is with the Raiders now, so they're not worrying about him. Kenny Young is still floating out there in free agency, so who knows if he comes back up. It'll be interesting to see how it pans out, but at least with
they re-signed Josie Jewell. Yeah, he was really good. You're right. So there's the middle inside linebacker position is probably Jules again, and he was the only full-time guy, I think, up to the point until he got hurt last year, and he was actually performing well or producing well like an IDP guy should after his previous years of kind of not really ever being too relevant. I think he had a decent little average year. I'm not thinking top notch, but he didn't disappoint. I think they got a little bit out of him for his managers.
The only thing that's not overly exciting about him for me is he's a throwback where he just doesn't give you anything in coverage. You can kind of say the same thing about Singleton, whereas at least Browning, he has that athletic profile he showed at college. He didn't produce, but as far as being an athlete, he gives you that opportunity to get that true 3-down guy if he were to get that and they wanted to do that.
Right. When I was reading about it too, if I remember right now, apparently that Malik Reed definitely changes that whole bearing thing. And plus you had already mentioned who they already had signed. But I mean, Jonas Griffith actually showed really well. He ended up being the 4th or 5th guy off the board or something, or off the bench to finally start playing because Stenard got the first crack after Josie Jewell. They went through some injuries. They also had Alexander Johnson on there last year. Didn't he get hurt or something and miss the rest of the season?
Johnson was a starter. He got hurt. Yep. Jewell was playing, got hurt. Right. Sternad was playing, got hurt. Kaiser, who they had, ended up getting hurt. Right. And Young got hurt. I mean, literally, we had a lot of that. I mean, Baltimore had that in their secondary. Everyone they brought in got hurt. It was a really weird year. And Denver's another team. We said that about the Chargers, same division, but they're going for it too. They got Russell Wilson. They revamped that. They're going to be looking for that defense to step up and be able to contain some of those offenses. So it'll be interesting on who they can actually feel like they can trust. Because to your point, none of those guys are really proven, as far as over the course of a year that they can one hold up and then two produce.
Bradley Chubb is going to be one of the biggest disappointments. I do remember earlier, it was my pick on IDP incentives. So I put it on linebackers and I started scrolling. I got into the names where they turn around and the rankings are all $9.99 and they're just by alphabetical order. And I go down and there's Chubb as undrafted. And it's just never worked out. He's, I know he's had health issues. There's been a lot of reasonings that you can say that he hasn't produced, but the flat out thing is man, he was so supposed to work out. He did not.
Yeah, he was a top 5 pick, maybe top 3. And he had a nice rookie year. And then, he just hasn't been healthy. It'd be nice to see him actually come back and live up to some of that potential. And I know he's counting on it. You talk about the motivation some players have. I believe he's a free agent after this year. And
I got one for you.
Motivation-wise.
Right. Real quick, what about Chase Young? I know he's third year. What are we doing with Chase Young? What are we expecting?
If I can get him at a discount, I'm getting him, and if I have him, I'm holding on to, because I've sort of read into the stuff that Rivera said and he said, where after that rookie year and the expectations that the team had coming into this past year, he was pushing too hard to try to make a play and not necessarily just take what's given to him and play to the field. You put that sort of pressure on yourself, you get hurt, and you try to come back from it and do that. I mean, we've seen that give players a bad season before.
Right.
He still has all the talent in the world. So no, I mean, I'm not trying to sell him. And again, if I can get him at a discount, I'm going to. But most people that I've seen aren't abandoning ship at this point, and I don't think you should be.
Yeah, and most of the investments that were put into have him on your roster to manage, you got to hang on. You got to hang on. What was that? Dirty O? What was that wide receiver, Josh Gordon? The man that just if you was a Josh Gordon fan, you just owned him for 5, 6, 7 years or whatever, just holding on, hoping. I remember that trend at some point, but it's not nearly there yet with Young. Not even close to that.
No.
I mean, you definitely hold on to him.
But you've seen that where maybe Chubb ends up being a guy that ends up being sort of like that, where he has that really nice rookie year, and then for whatever reason, Gordon's were a variety of other reasons, unfortunately, but he just wasn't out there, and you can't produce if you're not out there. And then if you're out there but not producing, that's another different story. That's probably more telling, even. At least with Gordon, when he came back and had that little bit of promise, if you were smart, you'd have the opportunity to pawn him off on someone else who had hope and not be sitting there for years with a bench warmer that to this point really isn't doing anything. He's a practice squad guy for Kansas City, I think, right now.
Yeah. Well, I knew that wasn't the case with everybody. There was people buying them up, stashing them on the super duper taxi squad, whatever. Anyways, nothing wrong with it though. Hey, everybody's got to go with their gut.
Yeah, it's worth a shot with a lot of these guys.
Yep.
But that's going to do it for us. We sort of went through the first 2 rounds, dove a little bit into the third round with a couple guys that mattered. So hopefully you got an idea, guys, that we're feeling like going to have some promise for year 2 here. And one of the biggest takeaways, don't go overspending. I know we beat this to death. Don't go overspending on those rookie linebackers or probably rookie defensive players in general, because like Gary, you can go to gridironratings.com and find out you're not going to get your return for the most part. You're going to be sitting there with a hope and a prayer and probably hanging on to them for a couple of seasons before you get something, if anything, worthwhile out of it. So
And don't forget, I'm going to go into the descriptions and add this link to that article with that percentage in there. It lays it all out by year and such. Hope you enjoy it. Please, not to cut you off there, because I just want to say real quick, make sure you check out the Rider Dynasty podcast here on Gridiron Ratings. And Jeff, our guy from Thursday, they got something going on right there, and it's really special. I love seeing it. But hit subscribe. I'm done. I'm going to let Kraig take us out of here, man.
Well, that does us for Tuesday night. We'll be back next Tuesday night with James and Chubb going over IDP, scoring, settings, all that sort of deep dive stuff before we get into rookies, sort of at a draft preview in 2 weeks. But Thursday night, you will be back. You'll be having Gary on. You're going to have Brandon. And is JJ back this week, or is he out this week?
JJ is going to be on special assignment too this week on Thursday. But we got Johnny the Greek or Orange Man. Guys. Yes, Johnny the Greek, folks. You got to make sure you know him. He's been on here a million times before. So make sure you don't miss out. We're going to talk about the top 5 or so rankings for IDP signings. Free agency IDP signings. So who you want to target the best out of that out of this class this year?
And that is at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Yes.
On Thursday.
Yep.
Next Tuesday,
I could tell if that was a statement or a question. So
it's both. And,
okay.
I'm Ron Burgundy. Yeah, I'm thinking through it as I'm saying it because I never remember in my brain trying to figure out Tuesday or Thursday.
And we keep switching it on you. So,
but again, that's going to do it for us. We'll be back at 10 or 9 p.m. See, I'm doing it again. I'm trying to think these two different
I'll
weeks,
see you guys Thursday at 8 p.m., folks. And we'll see Kraig next Tuesday. Hey, I'm going to bring it up too. We got some rookie content coming up later on too. We're going to have Jeff on with Kraig. You guys just please hit the subscribe. You don't want to miss nothing.
But again, we'll be back. Thank you for tuning in as always. Hit us up on Twitter if you have any questions for us. Gary's at the IDP Tipster as always. I'm at RotoHeat Kraig. You can find all your sort of fun stuff over at the Gridiron Ratings Twitter page as well as the website. But until next time, thank you and have a great night, everybody.